So today's sessions are going to be giving you some interviews with people from industry, just to talk through some of the areas relevant to this module. So we have today's guest. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
So if you could introduce yourself to the camera.
Yep, certainly. I'm Russell Hunt. I'm a project manager here at the university. Relatively new to the university. I've worked a lot of my career within financial services, so whilst risk coming into the university environment is a very integral part of my role, in the number of years experience I've had at both a business and change management level within the financial services sector, risk has been a really integral part of my role in terms of making sure that I identify risk and plan the most effective responses to that as well.
Okay. So corporate risk, isn't that just about health and safety?
It's a good question. Health and safety is really, really important within all industries. The well-being of staff being paramount as part of that. There are other physical risks such as fire and theft that organisations need to respond to, but non-physical risk is important. We're in a very digital age today, so lots of information is received in a digital way. We have processes in place and critical business processes which would be in lots of different industries. Just to bring that to life, if you could think of a critical business process in a bank, you wouldn't be very happy if you couldn't get any cash out of the cash point machine. You wouldn't be very happy that if you couldn't use your card on one of the readers or on a contactless basis. Those are critical business processes for financial institutions, and ultimately any risk around those is important. So in any work that you were doing for a financial insurance, a financial company, you'd have to make sure that you don't impact those systems. And that's financial risk, because it would cause media attention as well. If a cash point system went down, you'd get bad press in relation to that. There could be processes, this customer risk, so the way in which we deal with customers is important to make sure that customer risk is minimised. So there's a variety of non-physical risks. Some companies as well can also get targeted in terms of, they're quite high-profile companies, so organised crime would fish them more in terms of some of the, potentially emails coming through to their staff. If you open you'll know from your personal life, if you open an email, it can put malware on your system, that type of things. They can then access systems that you wouldn't want people to get access to. So risk is much more wider than just health and safety.
So it sounds like there's quite a lot of different types of risks that you address in an organisation and moving well beyond health and safety. So how do organisations manage these risks? Okay,
well, all organisations will have a risk management strategy in place and a plan for how they deal with that. All organisations would set up a function in terms of a dedicated risk management function, but responsibility of risk is with everyone within the organisation. So there'd be a number of defences. The first line of defence would always sit with everyone in the organisation, because we all have a responsibility for ensuring risk is managed and following those set of procedures as well. Other defences, and depending on the organisation, would depend on the number of defences they have. But they'd have a risk management function which is in place to monitor those as well, and then even a third function which would have the right levels of scrutiny over that as well. So risk is integral to all organisations, but ultimately all of us have responsibilities for managing risks in line with whatever that company's risk management strategy and plan is.
Okay, so you've sort of answered some of this already, but if you were working in the risk management department for an organisation, how would you identify the risks and then decide how to deal with them?
Okay, well, there's a number of risks a company would face depending on the sector you're in, but there'd be some internal risks. So if you looked at it at a micro level, there'd be lots of risks which a company would face into there, but there's also external risks as well. Most companies today, if you think externally, you'd have a Brexit strategy in terms of there is a risk to a lot of companies in terms of Brexit, which is a key external factor. You'd have competitor risks. You'd have risks from customer behaviour, customer treatment, because you can't. If you're a provider of a product to a customer, for argument's sake, you have to make sure that product is appropriate for customers as well. You also have to take into consideration that it's meeting all types of groups as well. because if you look at data today, there's a lot of disabled customers within the country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different types of groups that you need to make sure that you're managing the risk around those groups,
Yeah.
and that in your product design, you're effectively making the product available for all types of group.
Okay.
And that's really important today, because there's a risk that you're not treating them right otherwise, and that wouldn't be right today.
What sort of problems would that give if you didn't cover that aspect of things properly and you were found to be not treating customers correctly?
I think there's ultimately all companies would want to do the right things for their customers, but there's
Right.
external laws which you need to follow in terms of both law and regulation. Financial services, which is my background, heavily regulated industry.
Yeah.
There's lots of compliance regulation that we need to follow and laws, but ultimately it's about doing the right thing anyway.
Okay.
That's important. Risk management's one of the most fundamental things all organisations need to do.
So, just to sort of round off, is there any sort of key soundbite you could give for our students, some sort of core principles or similar?
Yeah. I think the key soundbite for me would be around we all face risk on a day-to-day basis, whether that's in our personal or professional life. To bring that to life, it's a risk whenever you cross the road, but we either subconsciously or unconsciously deal with that risk to safely cross the road. You'll all receive emails every day. You need to be vigilant that are they coming from a trustworthy source?
Yeah.
And that's no different in a corporate environment as well. It's about how you making sure you identify the risk, assess and evaluate that risk, plan some responses to that risk and implement it, and ultimately track it. Some risks you accept. You can't, you might not be able to change that risk.
Yeah.
You still want to monitor it, but depending on the probability of that risk versus the impact it gives to you as an organisation, you want to monitor it. However, it's those really key impact risks which and the proximity of the risk. Sometimes the risk could be quite close in terms of it could be a risk that it's not going to happen for 5 years.
Yeah.
So your reaction to that may be different today. If the proximity of the risk, if you think Brexit's probably a good one to use at the moment, the proximity of Brexit is imminently close. That 31st of October date is fast approaching. The treatment around that is now changing.
So, is risk always a bad thing?
Risk's not always a bad thing, no. There's nothing wrong with a risk, but it's about understanding that risk and having the right responses in place to deal with that risk. Otherwise, none of us would cross the road every day. So there's always a risk in everything you do in life, but it is about how you deal with that risk. But you have to have the effective procedures in place at a corporate level, and effective ways in which of identifying risks, assessing and evaluating them, planning responses, and monitoring them to make sure that you've got the effective controls in place.
So, precaution rather than reaction.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much for spending your time with us today. Much appreciated.
Thank you.